So the previous mini lecture on torture and conformity was pretty dark. So I thought I would end lecture 21 with something a little lighter. That is a discussion of compliance. Compliance is simply when we agree to someone else's request. It's not complying with an order, it's complying to a request. And these compliance techniques are used every day by people in sales and by students in classes to get what they want. It's a way of manipulating other people without them really knowing that you're manipulating them. So I'm going to go through these 4 compliance techniques. So the first one, imagine that you're home and somebody knocks on the door and asks you to sign a petition about some topic. Let's say the petition is to pass a rule that makes it safer for children to play in their neighborhoods. You know, who wouldn't sign a petition that voices your concern about whether children can play safely in their neighborhood? Once you sign the petition, though, the man next asks you, would you like to make a contribution, a financial contribution, to this cause? People are much more likely to make a financial contribution if they had just signed the petition. This is known as the foot in the door technique. The foot in the door technique. Here's how it works. First, you ask for something small, right? You get your foot in the door. You ask for something small, and you try to get people to comply to that small request. Would you sign a petition? Well, that's no big deal, right? I've seen people trying to raise money, and their first request is, will you contribute 1 penny to helping the homeless? That's about as small as a contribution you can get, right? 1 penny. The results show that if you get someone to comply with a small request, they are much more likely to then agree to a much larger request. So you get them in for something small, you're more likely to get them to agree to something big. And the reason for this is we want to appear consistent, right? If I gave you a penny to help the homeless, and then you ask me to work at the homeless shelter for 2 hours, well, I've already said I cared about the homeless by giving you a penny, so to be consistent, I should volunteer for a couple of hours at the homeless shelter. So it's a desire to appear consistent that people can use to manipulate us to comply with their goal request, a big contribution. So that was foot in the door. The second one's also a door analogy, but this is door in the face. And this one's kind of counterintuitive, but students can use this really well to manipulate faculty. So door in the face means the first thing you ask someone is a request that's so big that if you were standing at the door and made that request, you just slam the door in front of the person who made the request. It's completely outrageous. So students who wanted to manipulate a faculty member might say, hey, Maggie, it's been an awful semester. How about if you cancel exam 4? To me, that's laughable. I'm not going to cancel exam 4, right? So that's the equivalent of the door in the face. I'm like, I don't even take that seriously. Of course I'm going to say no. But then there's the second part of door in the face. So yeah, I've just slammed the door in your face. Now you come back with a small request. Well, how about, Maggie, if you just postpone exam 4 by 1 day? It turns out I am more likely to agree to a small request if I have just rejected you on a big request. And the reason here is we try to be nice social people, and I've just rejected your first request. Now you've asked me for something small. So if I reject you again, I really seem like a jerk. So that I feel a lot of pressure now with the door in the face technique to agree to a small request because I just rejected you. The lowball technique. This is very common when people try to buy a car. the lowball technique, or an expensive appliance, something like that. How does it go? Well, first, a salesperson will get you to agree to purchase an attractive but lower cost item. So maybe I decide I want to buy a Honda Civic and I go to a dealership and the salesperson convinces me that I can buy a 2018 Honda Civic for $5,000. Great. I agree to it. Terrific. I just bought myself a nice brand new used Honda Civic. But that's not where the lowball technique ends. Once I agree to buy the used car for $5,000, what's going to happen is the salesman's going to walk away, spend a little bit of time with his boss just to get the boss's okay, and come back and tell me that, oh, so sorry, he can't actually give me Honda for $5,000. But he could sell the Honda to me for $6,000. You see that? So lowballed. First, he got me to agree to a small price, and then he came back and said, actually, the price is going to be bigger than that. Turns out I am more likely to say, yes, I'll buy the car for $6,000 if I've previously agreed to buy it for $5,000. The idea here is consistency. I've already demonstrated that I wanted the car. You raise the price. To be consistent, I still want the car. The lowball, in summary, is someone gives you a low price for something, you agree to that low price, then they raise the price on you because you're more likely to accept a higher price if you've first accepted a lower price. Lowball technique. Very common when it comes to high cost items. And finally, the that's not all technique. Now, there used to be commercials on late night TV where they sold items. Now I think most of those items are sold in QVC or something. But there was a guy who sold the Sham Wow and all of these only seen on TV sort of offers. And how do they work? A salesperson might say, look at these pots and pans. Here are these 6 pots and pans, and they're the most fabulous pots and pans ever created in the world, right? And you can buy these pots and pans for, let's say, $50. Here's the hook. Here's what happens with that's not all. The salesperson makes a deal that sounds pretty reasonable, and then the salesperson says, and that's not all. In addition to these pots and pans, you'll also get these Ginsu knives for the same price. So they add a little something to the offer, and that makes us more likely to accept the offer. It's a kind of reciprocity thing. So I've indicated that I'm interested in purchasing these pots and pans, and the salesperson is throwing in these fabulous knives for free. So to reciprocate for his good gesture, I should make the good gesture and buy the pots and pans. That's not all technique. That's the end of this lecture. Thank you very much.